Hello and welcome. Today we're diving into the absolutely wild history of early Turkish rule in Bengal. It's a story packed with incredible wealth, some seriously over-the-top ambition, and this constant burning desire for independence that turned the whole region into a political cauldron. So here's the big question we're tackling. What was it about medieval Bengal that made it a kind of graveyard for empires? For centuries, this far-flung, super-rich province was the ultimate prize for the sultans of Delhi. But here's the thing. It was a prize they could never, ever seem to hold on to. It just kept defying them, and we're going to find out why. So here's our game plan. We'll start with the conquest that kicked it all off. Then we'll look at the cycle of chaos and rebellion that just kept repeating. We'll see how Bengal became Delhi's #1 problem child, witness a totally bizarre family drama with a father and son on opposing thrones, and finally see how Bengal forged its own path to independence. All right, so let's kick things off with our first main character, Bakhtiar Khilji. After conquering Bengal, he spends a couple of years getting everything in order. But Khilji was not a patient man, and he soon cooked up what one historian calls a quixotic vision, a dream so crazy it would lead straight to his downfall. And what was that vision? The conquest of Tibet. Yeah, Tibet. He even talked to the local king of Kamrup about it, who told him, hey, just wait a year and we can invade together. But Khilji? Nope, he couldn't wait. He was so driven by pure ambition that he decided to march on this mysterious, distant land immediately. And the campaign was an absolute train wreck. After marching in, the Tibetans rose up and inflicted massive casualties. The retreat turned into a total nightmare of guerrilla attacks. It got so bad that Khilji soldiers had to kill and eat their own horses just to survive. And the final blow? When they finally got back to the bridge they needed to escape, they found their allies had destroyed it. His entire army was wiped out. Only about 100 men made it back. Bakhtiar Khilji limped back to his capital, but he was a broken man, his authority completely shattered. He was assassinated within days by one of his own officers, and this quote really captures the brutal, sudden end to his rule and sets the stage for the chaos that would define Bengal for decades. So Khilji's death unleashes total chaos. It's a power vacuum, and his old lieutenants start scrambling for control. And right here, we see the pattern emerge that's going to repeat itself over and over and over again. Local rulers in Bengal rising up and rebelling against Delhi. I mean, just look at this. The turnover was insane. It was like a revolving door of rulers. Eventually, Ali Mardan, yep, the same guy who assassinated Bakhtiar, grabs power. He plays nice with Delhi for a little bit, but the second the Sultan dies, he declares independence. But his rule was so brutal that his own nobles ended up murdering him. Okay, so his successor, Awaz Khilji, he actually manages to hang on for 15 years. And he was a pretty good ruler. He built roads, bridges, and even got a nod from the Caliph of Baghdad. But even he couldn't resist challenging Delhi. After a long fight that even involved naval battles on the Ganga River, he was captured and killed by Delhi's army. And boom, the bloody cycle continues. All right, so at this point, Delhi is just fed up. They're tired of these constant rebellions. So they decide to rule Bengal directly, sending their own governors. And for about 50 years, this actually seems to work. But you know where this is going, right? Eventually, even Delhi's hand-picked men catch that rebellious bug, leading to the biggest defiance yet. So you gotta ask, why? What made Bengal so hard to control? Well, a few big things were at play. First, it was just so far away. Its massive, winding rivers were a complete mystery to armies from northern India. The monsoon seasons were brutal, and critically, the Bengalis were masters of naval warfare. On top of all that, Delhi was always busy fighting off Mongol invaders on its other border, which gave Bengal the perfect window of opportunity to rebel. And this brings us to our next major player, Tilgharal Khan. He was supposed to be the deputy governor, but he was the one really calling the shots. And he followed the classic playbook to a T. Raid your neighbors, get a lot of treasure, become super popular at home, and then, feeling confident, declare yourself the sovereign ruler Sultan Mughis-ud-Din, completely breaking away from Delhi. And at first, it worked. Toghrul actually defeated not one, but 2 imperial armies sent from Delhi to stop him. But this didn't scare the Sultan in Delhi, a guy named Balban. Oh no, it just made him furious. And this sultan, even at 80 years old, decided, fine, I'll do it myself. And Balban wasn't just tough, he was brilliant. He knew Tughral's biggest advantage was the rivers. So he marched all the way to eastern Bengal and made a treaty with the local king, Danuja, to block all of Tughral's escape routes by water. And get this, the mighty Sultan of Delhi agreed to physically stand up to formally receive this local king as an equal. That's how badly he wanted to trap Tughral. With his escape cut off, Tughral was hunted down and killed. So after crushing that rebellion, Balban puts his own son, Baghra Khan, in charge of Bengal. And this is where the story takes a turn that is so strange. One of our sources calls it unique in all history. When Sultan Balban was on his deathbed, he called for his son Baghra and offered him the imperial throne of Delhi, the whole empire. But Baghra refused. He said no thanks. He had fallen so in love with life in Bengal, the wealth, the beautiful landscape, the freedom from the stiff imperial court, that he chose to stay there rather than become the emperor of all of India. He chose Bengal over Delhi. This created a totally unprecedented situation. Since Baghra Khan turned down the throne, some political maneuvering back in Delhi put his own son, Kaikobad, on the throne instead. So now you've got the father ruling as the independent Sultan of Bengal and his young son ruling the entire empire from Delhi. But then, reports started reaching Baghra Khan that his son was living a life of pure debauchery, completely neglecting his duties as Sultan. As the historian Barani puts it, the father who had shirked the imperial throne finally felt a sense of paternal duty, so he gathered his army and marched towards Delhi, not to conquer it, but to go set his own son straight. The two armies met on the banks of the Gaur River. It looked like a civil war was about to break out between a father and his son. But what happened next was just incredible. As Baghra Khan walked into the court to formally submit to the emperor, his son, the young sultan was just overcome with emotion. He jumped down from his throne, ran to his father, and they embraced. A war turned into a family reconciliation right there on the spot. It's a really touching moment, but that family drama couldn't stop the wheels of politics from turning. The Balban dynasty in Delhi fell apart soon after, and in that power vacuum, Bengal saw its chance for a final, decisive break. The new sultan in Delhi, Muhammad bin Tughlaq, tried one last trick to get Bengal back under control. His strategy was classic divide and conquer. He formally split the entire region into 3 separate provinces, each with its own governor. The thinking was, if we fragment their power, they can't unite against us. So Bengal was carved up. You had Satgong in the west, Sonargaon in the east, and Lakhnaoti up north. But instead of making the region more loyal, all he did was create 3 potential hotspots for the next rebellion. And sure enough, the whole thing blew up in 1338. The governor of Sonargaon was killed, and his armor-bearer, a man named Fakhruddin, seized power and declared independence. But here's the crucial difference. This time, it stuck. The Sultan in Delhi was busy with other problems, and Fakhruddin managed to hold on. This wasn't just another temporary rebellion. This was the beginning of the independent Ilyas Shahi dynasty, and Bengal would stay free from Delhi's rule for almost 200 years. Which leaves us with a final thought. The story of Bengal feels like this constant loop, right? Ambition, rebellion, punishment, and then rebellion all over again. But that final successful break suggests maybe it's not just a loop. So, what do you think? Is history a straight line, always moving forward, or are we all just caught in a recurring cycle of human nature? Something to think about. Thanks for joining me.